As the world embraces a sustainable future, driven by electric vehicles, wind turbines and solar panels, the demand for minerals crucial to power these technologies has reached unprecedented heights. Eurasia, a treasure trove of mineral resources, beckons as a promising frontier for the discovery and development of crucial ores and metals. The opening session of the conference unveils opportunities that stretch across Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Armenia and Mongolia, countries with untapped potential waiting to fuel the clean energy revolution. Please welcome our speakers and panelists who have joined us today. They bring their combined expertise to navigate the intricate landscape of mineral exploration and extraction in Eurasia. Together, they aim to uncover collaboration and investment opportunities in this strategically significant region.
Thanks, Arthur. Thanks, video. And welcome, everybody. We'll get straight into the first session on strategic partnerships. There's 5 of us here this morning. We're going to have 3 short presentations, and then we'll have panel discussion soon after that. So please do, think of some questions. They're here to answer your questions when the time comes. So yeah, we've got lots to get through. This is a very intensely complicated session with lots and lots of bits and pieces and details. So we're not going to cover everything, but we'll do our best to pick out the main points. First of all, I'd like to introduce Laurie Moorhead, who's the Department Director of the Trade and Investment in the Department of Business and Trade at the British Embassy in Tashkent in Uzbekistan. So welcome, Laurie.
Thank you, Richard, and good morning, everyone. Dobro utro. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to the opening session of the annual MINEX conference. It gives me great pleasure to speak to everyone today and see such a well-attended and varied audience. My name, as Richard said, is Laurie Moorhead. I'm based in the British Embassy in Tashkent, and we look at all sectors of trade and investment for the countries that we're working in this region, and mining is particularly of interest in the region. Today, the Department for Business and Trade in Eastern Europe and Central Asia are leading a ministerial and business delegation from Armenia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Mongolia and Uzbekistan, I think the majority of which are in this room today. The interest from these countries in the UK is not coincidental. All around the globe, UK companies, both majors like Rio Tinto and smaller companies and SMEs, use cutting-edge exploration techniques and are world leaders in discovering and developing new assets. It is said you can usually spot someone definitively who was trained at the world-renowned Camborne School of Mines, and it's hard to find mining operations around the world without UK quality, innovation and green solutions. In the past 5 years, DBT, the Department for Business and Trade, has supported British businesses exporting over $500 million worth of goods and services to the Eastern Europe and Central Asian countries. UK companies are already showing their confidence in the region, with Rio Tinto developing the biggest copper mine in Mongolia with around £7 billion worth of investment to date. UK supply chain company Weir Minerals invested over £1 million to build a servicing supercentre in Kazakhstan last year. We believe that there are many more opportunities for successful partnerships in the region. Mining is one of the key sectors for this region, which are home to almost every element in the periodic table. In Kazakhstan and Mongolia, mining and metallurgy sector corresponds to around 15% and 24% of the country's respective GDPs. The sector dominates Armenia's goods exports. Kyrgyzstan has the biggest deposits of gold, for which I have worn my gold tie in particular reference today, and antimony and other minerals. Mining represents 7.5% of all expected foreign direct investments and credit in Uzbekistan. Significant reforms are being introduced in these markets to make their mining industries more attractive for foreign investment. In 2018, Kazakhstan introduced a new mining code, which has since increased 5-fold the number of licenses acquired. Similarly, in Kyrgyzstan, the government is developing a new mining code that will increase transparency and attractiveness for foreign investors. Uzbekistan, with a group of international banks and Navoy Mining, syndicated a loan, which is a significant step in opening opportunities for attracting finance and capital from Western companies. Mongolia has long been operating a sustainable legal environment that enabled granting exploration licenses based on these applications. As part of our expanding collaboration, we are proud to say that the British Geological Survey, the UK's premier provider of geological information with nearly 200 years of expertise, is working together with these governments in the region to support regional geological development. We believe that if we can build this partnership in the region, these organisations can accelerate the development of mineral wealth, unlocking the enormous potential for bilateral cooperation and driving economic growth. But beyond that, we are now moving into a new age of mining, a green energy and technological transition where coal must be phased out and the supply of what we now call critical minerals must rise by a factor of at least 4 by 2040 to deliver existing climate change commitments using wind, solar, hydrogen and other technologies. Global demand for electric vehicle battery minerals, lithium, graphite, cobalt and nickel is projected to increase between 6 and 13 times by 2040 under current policies. This exceeds the rate at which new primary and secondary sources are currently being developed. If we want faster transition, we will need even more. Taking advantage of this new age in mining and improving the resilience of the global supply of critical minerals is now a key part of UK government priorities. The UK's first critical minerals strategy was published last summer. The strategy aims to maximise our critical minerals value chain through mining, refining, manufacturing and recycling in a way that creates jobs and growth and protects communities and our natural environment. We want to re-establish the UK as a skills leader in mining and technology and to continue to build our cutting-edge research and innovation in exploration, mining, refining and manufacturing. We believe we will achieve this in partnership with other countries like Kazakhstan, Mongolia and the others in the region. We are proud to say that we have signed a memorandums of understanding with Kazakhstan to cooperate in the area of critical minerals and hope one with Mongolia will follow soon. By facilitating technology transfer, education, research and development between our countries, we can achieve the net zero commitment by 2050. Our joint efforts, listening to industry and looking at best-in-class examples of regulatory regimes around the world will help lay the groundwork for a 21st century mining sector between these countries with high-quality jobs, skills, technology and investment in communities to fuel economic growth. We're excited to see what the future holds for our countries and we continue to work together to a sustainable and prosperous future. Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, many thanks for listening to me today and I wish everyone a very successful week and conference today. Lots of my colleagues from the Department for Business and Trade are here today, so please do reach out to them and look how we can support you both in the UK and in the region. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Laurie. No, that's very interesting to hear what the UK government is proposing and doing. Arthur asked me to just provide a little bit of a kind of flavour of some of the geological perspectives around this whole area of critical and strategic minerals. I'm a geologist, I'm not an economist or a policymaker or a lawyer or anything like that, so there's all sorts of stuff that my learned colleagues will be able to opine on in the panel discussion, but I'm going to stick more or less to the kind of some of the things, some of the geological and mineral deposit issues in Central Asia that really sort of are sowing the seeds of this discussion this whole day, really. I guess very quickly, because I don't have much time, what are critical minerals, what are strategic raw materials partnerships, and what are they trying to achieve? Well, essentially, they're trying to achieve, diversity of supply and security of supply. And I guess other people will come back to this, I'm sure, but a good example of what's currently going on in terms of trying to achieve this sort of thing is the EU Critical Raw Materials Act, which has been very much the focus of people's attention this year, and trying to basically ensure that the EU gets good diversity of supply from lots of different countries that are aligned and are not in conflict with what they're trying to achieve. So, I I guess you asked the question, well, what are the strategic minerals? There's a very handy list they provided, and different governments have different ideas about what are strategic depending on their particular needs, you know, and of course the Americans have got a different view and the UK's got a different view. For your purposes, it's quite handy just to have this image here showing all the critical minerals, and then the strategic raw materials are the ones in bold. So these are the ones that are really critical. I've circled aluminium, that's just been added very recently. And the ones in blue are the ones that have been added on just in the last year, or weren't on the 2020 list. You can see there's quite a range of minerals there, depending on, you know, what the particular uses are. One of the reasons aluminium has come on later is, you know, partly because of the conflict in Ukraine and the sanctions against Russia. And I'll go into some of those synergies later that drive some of this picking of what's on where. This is from the same EU report that talks about the critical minerals, and you can kind of see very quickly where a lot of these critical and strategic raw materials are coming from. And this is what is actually provided to the EU currently, or as of last year anyway. You notice Kazakhstan is in there and Turkey's in there, but not a huge focus from the rest of the region. Obviously, there are suppliers from all these countries to the EU, but these are the major ones. So obviously Kazakhstan is a big supplier of phosphorus and titanium metal. But you notice very quickly that China's, oh, press the wrong button there. I thought I had a pointer. I don't think the pointer's working. Anyway, everyone knows where Russia and China are. So you can see that huge amounts of critical minerals from China, and the EU document and specifically points out that China is an area that it wants to move away from. It's very important to note that it talks about partners that are aligned in terms of its in terms of the politics and ESG requirements, all that sort of thing, and then it actually specifically points at China. So there's a move to diversify. So what's the UK doing? As Laurie just sort of said, there's a critical mineral strategy that was introduced in 2022. It's since been revised and is constantly being evolved. Some of the critical minerals are the same. Some of them are different. It's slightly done differently. There's a set of critical minerals which you can see in the big box. Notice it doesn't have copper, doesn't have titanium. Then you've got a watch list, which is, you know, things that are coming in depending on politics and various supply issues. Nickel has been flagged as a potentially important watch list mineral, given, you know, some of the previous supplies from Russia. And, you know, the EU, as Laurie mentioned, the UK, sorry, is producing critical partnerships with a number of countries, and, you know, starting with some Central Asian countries, Kazakhstan and Mongolia. But it hasn't got to the sort of this Raw Materials Act point yet. So getting back to our region that we're talking about here, Central Asia, I'm going to read this out, but this is basically a quote from the EU-Kazakhstan Strategic Partnership, which was discussed at COP27 in Egypt last year, and has since been turned into a memorandum of understanding, and hopefully will continue to develop. The idea being that there will be strategic partnerships between Kazakhstan companies and companies in the EU. It's important to note that you know, there will at least need to be a 40% ownership of host nations to form these strategic partnerships. Now, and there's all sorts of stuff in the Act about what is expected of the supplier, what is expected of the recipients. There's a lot of ESG in there. There's a lot of supply chain, important elements of supply chain. There's talk about timeframes being accelerated. Some of this is good in principle. How it actually happens in reality is another matter. Who knows? We'll wait and see. But at least in principle, there's a strong push to make these things work. So that was the bit that I'm not really an expert on at all. I'm a geologist. This is a very pretty map showing the region. I hoped my pointer would work, but despite the colours and despite all the dots show you where there are lots and lots of mineral deposits, or some of them are operating mines, some of them are closed. But it really shows some very, very important key things about the region. The region's vast. It stretches all the way through into northwest China, into Mongolia, and beyond. It covers the old former Soviet Union republics. There are some major belts running through the south, along the Tian Shan region, through Uzbekistan to Kyrgyzstan, where we see lots of gold, copper deposits. And then in Kazakhstan, you have a whole variety of different geological terrains that are covering all sorts of different minerals, up from the Urals, coming in from the north, through the Balkhash region and the middle Tian Shan, and eastern Kazakhstan. It's a hugely productive and historically very important region, and still is. And apologies to my friends in Mongolia, we didn't quite get that far in the maps. So all these maps are very kindly prepared by the team in our Almaty office, and this is where our focus is. I'm also going to apologise to Armenia because they're in a completely different geological province to this one we're talking about in Central Asia, which is part of the kind of the Zagros Tethyan belt of closure. So we're not going to get onto Armenia, unfortunately, today. So maybe just start with copper. Copper, people argue about whether it's a critical mineral or not. Every time you go to a conference about supply for the green transition, copper is obviously a critical mineral. Whether it's strategic, who knows? But when you think about Central Asia, you do think about copper. It's a massive thing. We've got some enormous deposits. We've got some enormous mines. We've got AGMK, Almalik. We've got Boshkol. We've got Zhezgan complex. And some of these have been known for many, many years and have been developed for many, many years. I guess that just this slide really just highlights the copper provinces and where else we find copper deposits. Huge areas, potential for exploration. And this is kind of just an idea of the scope of what we're talking about here when we talk about the potential for strategic partnerships. I'm just going to focus on Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan just to illustrate some of the issues around exploration and focus. So we've got some, hopefully you can see these, we've got some, a map of Uzbekistan showing the key copper deposits, mostly around the Almalik area. These are not the size of the mines, they're just occurrences, some of them are mines, plus some lithium deposits. When you plot gold on there, you start to see that, wow, there's a lot of gold occurrences, a lot of exploration being onto gold, and rightly so. Gold is a very important mineral, very strategic for the company, but it's not part of what we're talking about in terms of EU strategic partnerships. Similarly, if you look at Kyrgyzstan, plotted up the copper deposits more. When you overlay gold and copper gold, you find a lot of gold. So again, there are geological reasons for some of this. The Tian Shan belt is different to what you find in Kazakhstan, but the focus has been on gold and copper. Maybe we've been missing quite a lot of the things that we're now focusing on as strategic minerals. So getting away from copper, just a couple more examples of prospectivity and scope. This is lithium deposits, different types of lithium. You've got brines in pink, you've got pegmatites and veins. The East Kazakhstan region is very, very productive for that. But look at the vast potential for lithium brines in Kazakhstan, it's immense, and we're just really scratching the surface. And similarly, titanium, rare earths. Now, let's get it that map's getting a bit sparse. But again, what is it telling you? Is it telling you that, where was the focus? And if you remember back at the beginning of the presentation, there's a map showing supply of critical minerals. Titanium metal supplies 36% of the EU's requirements. And most of that comes from one big factory in East Kazakhstan. Now that factory, that big complex, very efficient, providing titanium metal, that's now trying to source 40% of its ore trying to source 40% of its ore from local mines, the Sapayevsky mine, which is near Ust-Kamenogorsk. But this is where you start to notice that, of course, we have big neighbour next door, and of course, traditionally there were lots of partnerships and integrated systems between ore production, refining, and production. And we still have those. We still have alumina going to aluminium smelters in Russia. We still have coking coal going to, and chromite ore going to steel production in Russia. So these things are still going on. And of course, with the EU's focus on working with partners that they're aligned with, some of these relationships are going to have to change. And then finally, just as a final point, this is quickly downloaded exploration expenditure in 2023. Now, you can take this with a bit of a pinch of salt. The Central Asian countries, unfortunately, we've got a big line through Kazakhstan, and that's not deliberate. But look at the amount of money that's being spent on exploration. Now, of course, that doesn't take into account some of the state-owned companies, some of the private companies that you can't get data on. But I think it tells a very important picture about the size of the region, the geological prospectivity of the region, and the amount of exploration that's actually going on. Whether or not that's probably a bit understated. But if you just look at it, I think it tells a very important message. So the question is, there are initiatives to build strategic partnerships on raw materials. How are you going to get there? You still need to explore the legal framework needs to be right, and the requirements of the receiving countries need to be met. So there's a big challenge. I'm sure, given this region and given the focus that governments and companies are putting on it, that we'll get there. But yes, that's a quick overview. So thanks very much. And now I'd like to introduce Hovhannes Harutyunyan, who's the Minister of Territorial Administration and Infrastructure of the Republic of Armenia.
Good morning. I am Hovhannes Harutyunyan, the Deputy Minister coordinating the work of the Mining Department of the Ministry of Territorial Administration and Infrastructure of the Republic of Armenia. I will present to you a brief review of the current situation and the vision of the future of the mining industry in the Republic of Armenia. Armenia has many years of experience and great potential in the field of mining. For example, there are more than 500 mineral occurrences, including critical minerals such as vanadium, titanium, cadmium, cobalt. It should be noted that currently Armenia doesn't have an approved list of critical minerals. It should be noted that Armenia implements transparent and responsible mining. Armenia joined the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative in 2017, within the framework of which Armenia was awarded the Special Award of AIT Presidency. Armenia managed not only to implement the international standard in a short period of the time, also introduced innovative solutions by developing an online data collection system that provides the necessary information in open formats. In order to implement the development of the sector in line with time and promote international cooperation with Armenia in the mining field, a strategy for the development of mining sector was developed and approved by government in 2023. The main goal of the strategy is to overcome the existing problems in the sector and implement mining in Armenia in accordance with international standards. The implementation of the strategy will ensure availability of information, clear understanding of standards and regulation of the mining industry in Armenia for investors who wish to conduct mining in Armenia. The implementation of the strategy will stimulate the implementation of new projects both in the exploitation and exploration of the main deposits and will also contribute to the study of critical minerals, the discovery of their potential in Armenia and their further exploration. Thank you. And I want to say everything with you in London. Thank you.
Thanks, Hovhannes.
So, thank you. So I'm going to invite the panel up onto the behind the stage now. Where's Natalia? There's Natalia. Hovhannes, do you want to come back? And Laurie as well. We've got a little bit of time before. I'll take some questions in a minute. Grab a seat. We've got lots of mics and. We've got a bit of time. We'll take some questions just before the break. But I'd like to kind of ask each of the panel members about this EU Critical Raw Materials Act. You know, how do they perceive it, and do they think it's a positive thing that's actually going to deliver results, or is it just another thing that might drop away? Maybe Natalia, I don't know if you've got some thoughts on that.
Thank you, Richard, and good morning, everyone. Well, it's certainly a positive undertaking. We'll still need to see how practically it will be implemented. The will is definitely there to strike relationship with countries outside of European Union, and to that extent, EU has signed 2 memorandums of understanding with countries that EBRD also covers, Ukraine and Kazakhstan, and also has developed a roadmap how to implement those MOUs. I think it's a drive in the right direction, and it's good to see that there are intention to simplify or streamline the procedures related to strategic projects. There is a definition of strategic project. There is an intention to create one authority that would deal with various issues related to this project. We were yet to see what funding will be available from the European Union, from the European Commission, to projects within the European Union, but also outside. So positive, but still to be seen how it will be implemented.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Marius, anything to add to that potentially on the investment side?
Sure. And thank you very much for the invitation. Maybe before answering that, I give you a little bit of a background as to why Franklin Templeton is represented on this panel. So I'm Deputy CEO for our business in Romania, and I'm also in charge of basically working with governments around the world to replicate what we have been doing in Romania. For those that are not aware, Franklin Templeton has been managing a closed-end fund in Romania, which was set up by the Romanian government back in 2005, comprising of state-owned companies, both minority and majority stakes, which were given to this fund. It's called Fondul Proprietatea. It was $4 billion at inception. So it's basically a sovereign mandate which was awarded to us to manage it. And we've been incredibly successful over the last 13 years in basically opening up the Romanian capital markets, financing state-owned companies, restructuring them, increasing their efficiency and profitability over time. We also listed the fund on the Bucharest Stock Exchange and on the London Stock Exchange. Bucharest listing took place in 2011 and London listing in 2015. This was a fund which was set up by injecting these state-owned companies, most of which were loss-making, were a drag on the budget deficit of Romania. So we had to work very hard to engage with the government, restructure them, open them up for the capital markets. And given that we've built a 13-year track record, we've increased the profitability of most of the state-owned companies 6 times over this period of time. We basically, the way we look at it, not just the dividends that were paid out to shareholders, especially the Romanian government, which is 2% of GDP on an annual basis. We look at it from the perspective of how many jobs we have saved in making these companies more efficient and profitable. That being said, we're now engaging with governments around the world to replicate this, because many countries still have a huge state-owned company representation in the overall economy, and there is a drive to decrease that, or for the strategic sectors to make that a more sustainable approach, a more efficient approach. And I'm glad to see that a lot of the countries that are mentioned in our panel are countries that we are working with. And I would highlight Uzbekistan here. This is where we are the most advanced. We've signed a memorandum of understanding with the government of Uzbekistan. Mining companies will be transferred into the fund once it's created. But the idea is to basically open up the countries for institutional investors, because I think a lot of us on the equity side or on the fixed income side recognize the potential of these countries, not just in the mining sector, which is the topic of the discussion today, but across a wide range of sectors. And I would encourage as many of you as possible to get on the ground, because I think in a lot of these countries, the perception is far worse than the reality. I think what you will find on the ground is very exciting. I know I speak from my experience in visiting these countries. I also speak from my experience marketing Romania to institutional investor. I was shocked how the perception and the realities are different. And one goal for setting up this vehicle is to allow some of the underlying companies to access funding. And this goes back to your last slide, Richard, in which you showed how little is actually invested into exploration in some of the countries in the region that we are discussing today. And from our perspective as Franklin Templeton, we hope to contribute in changing that by bringing more investments into these countries. Now, coming back to your question about our perception of the European Union initiative, I think it's definitely a positive one. Of course, it comes probably a bit later than it should have come, and in light of a conflict that shows dependence of the European Union on certain countries. I think to what Natalia mentioned, investors are going to be a critical part of this process, because a lot of these companies will not want funding just from the European Union, from the member states, but they will go into the equity capital markets, they will go into the fixed income markets, and the key point is that as we're thinking about this transition to a more efficient economy, a net zero economy, if you will, a green economy, I think investors are getting ready for that, because there will be more exciting projects that will be coming for funding. And of course, it all depends on the technical stuff, right? Because I think in what's been published so far, there's a lot of technical details that are missing, which hopefully will be addressed in the 2023-2024 parliamentary session. And I think we will see more developments on this before the European Union elections next summer. So we're excited to see the technical details, but the benchmarks are going to be critical, right? Because I think those are a moving target right now, whether it's 10 or 15%, whereas 40 or 50% on the recycling. Those are very, very critical pieces of information that are missing. But overall, we see this as a positive. I mean, we look at some of the countries in Eastern Europe, right, and there were a lot of them, the way the cities were built, they were mono-industrial cities, a lot of mining dependent, a lot of dependence on the big state-owned companies in those areas. This can obviously have a positive impact on the local communities by creating jobs, by bringing some investments into those areas.
Yeah, sure. No, thanks, Marius. I guess perhaps for both of you, Natalia, you're both investing in these regions. We forget that Russia and China are already investing in these regions. They're investing with, not necessarily with all the structures and things that are being put in place by the EU. And I guess maybe the question is it a little bit late, or is it making sure we do the right thing, which is being done? But how do you manage that dynamic, because it's Central Asia and it's right in the middle of some very, very big interested parties.
I think you're absolutely right. Those countries have really spent some years. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's up to the country in the first instance to focus and develop its mining sector, and the role of governments and national mining authorities in doing this is very important. One of the positive examples, and what I consider to be leadership in the region, is Kazakhstan. In 2018, Kazakhstan adopted a new subsoil law in which EBRD also participated in preparation, and since then they've issued over 2,000 exploration licenses. And you can see a presence of international major mining companies as well as juniors, and also companies from the region as well. Some of our clients are from Turkey, for example, Yildirim Group, Polymetal, from Russia, successfully investing in gold mining in Kazakhstan. So it's really important for the country to make a strategic decision to sustainably develop its mining sector and do all necessary steps along those pathways, because it's important to remember that mining is a very competitive industry. Investors are not attached to any particular jurisdiction. They look, of course, on the quality of the resources, but then they look at the investment climate. And for them, in a way, they're impartial whether they go to Peru, Mongolia, Tajikistan, or Albania. They want to see a stable investment climate. They want to see taxation that they can understand, and they want stability. So with this in mind, I think it's very important for Central Asian countries and Armenia as well to remember that they are in a way competing for capital both from the mining companies' perspective that will be investing in their regions, but also from capital from the financial markets as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I absolutely agree with Natalia. I mean, I think the perception of a lot of governments and state-owned companies is that investors are just waiting at the border with cash to pile into these companies, whereas the reality is there is a huge competition in capital markets to attract investors by offering the highest possible rates of return. Now, that being said, I think institutional investors have right now or can have a big impact into these companies, and this is why a lot of the SOEs should open themselves up by listing on the stock exchange, by issuing bonds on the capital markets, because they can benefit for free from expertise from institutional investors into how to improve their sustainability ratings, how to improve their ESG scorings. I know how we look at it at Franklin Templeton, and for us, ESG is absolutely critical, a critical part in the investment process. And we become, especially with companies where we have a bigger holding, we become a partner in helping them improve their governance. We advise them on how they can change their board, how can they change their management to improve the conversation and the path to sustainability. So I think companies should definitely take advantage of that, no matter what region they're in. They shouldn't discount the fact that institutional investors can provide a huge amount of expertise.
Okay, thanks. Maybe Hovhannes, maybe we can ask you. You represent one of these countries of interest, and how do you see things like strategic partnerships with the EU and with the UK, and maybe the US? Where do you feel your country is in terms of being ready to embark on these sorts of partnerships, both in terms of the country's willingness to do the things that those investors want, and how the investors perceive the mining sphere in Armenia?
Thank you. I introduce what happened in Armenia in this year, and what we want see in the future, and with Europe, with USA, we are open, and I say it is very important for us, and now we work with some companies, and we want to change our system of mineral balance. We want to work with Crisco and work with Jork, and we want open for all countries and for all investors.
Fantastic. Thank you, Hovhannes. And I guess we mustn't forget that we are in Great Britain and not in the EU. So, and Laurie, you obviously gave us a flavour of some of the things that are happening. I mean, do you see something like this act, the UK adopting a similar approach, or is it more less sort of structured, because to create an act is quite a definitive sort of piece of legislation, isn't it, that you wouldn't really necessarily expect with these types of arrangements.
Yeah, thank you, Richard. I won't speak for the EU or to the EU,
no,
but I think from my perspective, I think what's been clear from our speakers today already, and the room in which we sit, various people and organisations represented, is the complexity of this issue. So in terms of whether it's a strategic relationship between countries, which we are certainly looking at, and I mentioned the memorandums of understanding that we've already signed, but all the way down from that strategic high-level picture and what we want to do as the Department for Business and Trade is where we can tie all of that together. So introducing, whether it's financing or whether it's regulation, we have colleagues here today who are looking at supporting those conversations between countries, but also with companies as well. So in terms of my department's approach, it's very much we are encouraging the relationships to grow between companies and our countries in mining, and understanding of the complexity of all that supply chain or chain. So where we can facilitate that both in the countries themselves or in the UK is great. And events like these and making introductions to our colleagues and companies here is how I think we can do that at a working level and building up to or building down from the strategic level as well. So I think it's important to keep that in mind, is how this will actually be enacted is with the people in this room and how they work together.
Okay, no, thanks, Laurie. We've got a little bit of time. Are there any questions from the audience that you'd like to ask our panel? I know it's early days. Question over here. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Norman Krishnaba, Grata Law Firm, Bishkek office. My question to Natalia. Considering rather limited footprint of EBRD in natural resources of Kyrgyzstan, and considering that Kyrgyzstan has been doing certain reforms for the last 2-3 years with the new government, do you see any potential projects in your pipeline in natural resources?
Thank you. In fact, EBRD has invested approximately 3 billion euros over the 30 years of its mining investment life in general, and half of it is in Central Asia. You're absolutely right. I mean, the majority of our investments so far have been in Kazakhstan and Mongolia, but also Kyrgyzstan. And we really look forward to be able to support Kyrgyz companies as well as investors that want to invest in Kyrgyzstan in developing quite rich resource potential of the country. But as you know, EBRD has very strict criteria as far as 2 key issues are concerned. First of all, its integrity. We are an international financial institution, so reputation of EBRD is very important to us, and we will not take undue reputational risks. And second is ESG, because we have long-term experience in supporting companies in developing projects with due respect to environment and obtaining also so-called social license to operate. It's very important that local communities are endorsing the project, and that the potential sponsors and project developers are working very closely to ensure that the local communities benefit from such developments. So we are hopeful that Kyrgyzstan also is able to develop its mining potential, and we will be there to support if those conditions, as I mentioned, are implemented.
Thanks, Natalia. Any other questions? Okay. I did have another kind of questions, and it follows on from what you just said, Natalia. You know, it's about the timeline to develop some of these strategic partnerships, and the ESG. And we're not just talking environmental, we're talking the whole supply chain governance and all that sort of stuff. How all that fits into some of these accelerated timelines. I mean, to have just to kick off an investment, but to actually develop a strategic project in sort of some of the timelines that are being suggested by the Raw Materials Act seems quite ambitious. And will it actually work out the way that we expect it to work out? Because I think there's a sense that these things can be accelerated, but you can't necessarily accelerate stakeholder engagement, for example, when you have to develop a new project.
No, you're absolutely right. That's why the guideline time that is mentioned in the Critical Raw Materials Act excludes the preparation of the environmental social impact assessment, because this is one of the work streams that you cannot, speed up. You can speed up, review, approval, support, the way ministries and various authorities interact among themselves. But mining industry is an industry that requires time to develop the projects. It's a natural barrier. So those companies that started already work are the ones that are likely to benefit it most. And as the colleague said, maybe the Critical Raw Materials Act is coming a little bit too late, because the discussion within the European Union about the need to support indigenous metals and minerals production and also increase diversity and strengthen supply chains have been going on for the last maybe 15 years or even more. It's great to see that European Union is acting now, but as said, we still need to see how it will transpire in the future. So what can help is for the sponsors and promoters to use the best ESG expertise available, not to try to cut corners, because that would hurt later. Because now any provider of financial resources, irrespectively whether debt capital markets, equity capital markets, IFIs, or commercial banks, the first thing they look is, whether the ESG angle has been addressed sufficiently. So it's not a nice to have. It's an obligation, and beyond, it's actually an opportunity, because there is a number of financial products that supports responsible mining companies. There is increased popularity of green loans, green bonds, sustainability bonds. We as a EBRD have access to the resources of the Green Climate Fund, which provides tranches that are sensitized to various ESG KPIs, and the interest rate as a result of reaching those KPIs is going down. So for those sponsors that are not prepared to spend time and money, ultimately money, on preparing themselves for robust and best industry standard ESG journey, there will be no financing available, to be honest.
And that's very important, Natalia. And I guess, Marius, when you're looking now at investments, do you feel that the landscape has changed or is changing in terms of the way you approach companies in Central Asia, let's say, and Armenia, for example, about how you have that conversation about what do they need to bring to the table for your investment, and as opposed to, well, that's all too hard, I'm going to go and get investment from China or whatever. And maybe Laurie, you can comment as well.
Sure. I think we've been positively surprised by the drive in, for instance, in Uzbekistan, in Kazakhstan as well, to improve the ESG scoring, to start those conversations in certain cases, and these companies are going out into the market looking for the best consultants, and they're doing this without first coming into the market for capital. So I think institutional investors recognize those efforts, and I think those efforts will pay long-term dividends for a lot of these companies if what the consultants are telling them is being implemented correctly. And I'm referring here to the mining sector as well. And for us, that's been, I think, a net positive in our engagement with some of these stakeholders.
Sure, no, absolutely, yeah.
From my side, Richard, I think ESG, we could view it as a restriction or a requirement, but also an opportunity. That you asked about whether investment can be sourced from elsewhere, from China or Russia, and And I think this all plays into the idea of balancing some relationships in the region and globally. I think that's what a number of countries are pursuing at the moment. To take the E of ESG as the example, where green technologies can come into this, it's more efficient, it's technological exchange, it's those sorts of things that we can work together as the UK and UK companies with countries in the region to expand that partnership, but also attract investment from Western investors and the London Stock Exchange and the like. So I think it's a good opportunity, both at that technological exchange level, to meet those requirements, but also to expand efficiency and all the other great things.
And if I can add one point, I mean, for us as an institutional investor, a big focus is the G part, because we think that with the proper governance, with improving the diversity of the board, with getting the right people in the top management, aligning those incentives appropriately, giving them the KPIs to really deliver on the E and the S part, I think from our experience, it makes the conversations and the results a lot more efficient.
Yeah, no, thanks, Marius. I think and even from our experience, at the geological resources area, pushing the people align their reporting with international codes, and JORC and CRISCO, as you suggested, Hovhannes, that Armenia is trying to do that now. Those are all our level fundamental parts of that good governance, and now that those codes are improving their focus on ESG, the whole thing is building together. So I think that creates a very positive environment for that type of these ongoing investments and working with people like yourselves. So I think just to sum up, I guess. We've only scratched the surface of these type of strategic partnerships. It's great to see that these things are starting to work. Hopefully, when we all come back in a year's time, we'll be able to, show more progress. But I think there's definitely the trajectory is towards getting these things going. Political landscape, we don't know what's going to happen in a year's time. We never do. But anyway, I think it's a very positive. I'd like to thank the panelists and speakers for their insights. And if there's no more questions, thanks very much. And see you all later in the coffee session.